Welcome to the Green Transition Show. I am Dr. Francis Tuokuu. This platform is dedicated to addressing the most pressing and topical issues around the world, particularly at this time of our history, where climate change is a threat to food security and the well-being of our planet. Today, we look at a very important topic, ESG. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So we are going to look at how ESG is affecting businesses, shaping businesses, policy, and sustainable development. Before we start the program, I urge all of you to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and colleagues, so it will motivate us to continue to bring you very topical and important topics. With me today is Mr. Gabriel Opoku Asare. Mr. Gabriel Opoku Asare, please welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Francis, for the privilege to join this conversation. I think you've done such a great job to create this platform for these very meaningful conversations. So thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners and tell us why ESG? What made you to develop interest for ESG?
Yeah, so I'll make it really snappy. So you mentioned my name, Gabriel Opoku Asare. I'll say a business executive at the C-suite level, spanning with over 20 years in leading public policy, trade policy as well, and reforms, ESG, stakeholder engagement and communications across various continents, Southeast Asia, Africa, North America. And basically, my work has evolved around shaping policy on ESG, as well as also implementing ESG programs in many markets. So, but currently my role is leading Ghana's export drive and export agenda by accelerating our export ambition through intelligent frameworks and also capacity building to help our traders and local businessmen to be able to be certified and meet their global ESG standards, and which is going to create market access for all of these, focusing on non-traditional exports in Ghana. My work has taken me in Ghana. Some of the significant things we did was to launch the Ghana Plastic Recycling Alliance, called GRIPE. I was working for Diageo. We launched it with Unilever and Coca-Cola and many other brands as well in Ghana, basically to reduce plastic pollution in Ghana. And we did an Africa level partnership as well with the same group in order to encourage investments into the sector. So back in 2017, 2018, if you look across all of Africa, there was only, I think, 2 plastic recycling firms in the whole of Africa, from bottle to bottle. And some of the work we did was working with government to put in regulations that make sense, to encourage investment into that sector so that they have ready off-takers when they produce these recycled plastics as well. That work, so that was one of the big things I did in Africa. And going to North America, I worked on regenerative agriculture projects across Kentucky, Iowa, and a few states in North America, really looking at sustainable practices aligned with global benchmark, SBTI benchmarks, to ensure that we do source a lot of our raw material when I was working for Diageo from these farmers. So in these regions, we're working with experts in the space, coalitions, who we partnered and joined some of these coalitions to be able to do that work in Kentucky and many parts of the US as well. We also did some work around recycling, which is glass recycling initiative, which I was leading as well, called Don't Trust Glass. And through that initiative, we have the first glass recycling facility in Kentucky, and that was actually launched by the governor of Kentucky, and that's such a huge milestone for them. So those are some of the things I've worked across my career globally. I think ESG is a natural fit when it comes to most multinationals are integrating that into their business or have integrated that into their business. In my role as corporate affairs chief in these organizations, was a natural fit for me to lead this agenda in partnership with the other functions as well.
Yeah, that's a wealth of experience. I'm sure our viewers want to know what has been the experience working in different parts of the world, working in different continents. What has been the experience?
I think you need to in different parts of the world, you really need to adapt to the cultures in these various parts of the world, because you go to Southeast Asia, it's highly religious, but also the work ethic is pretty high, and they are delivering results in there. But the style of leadership that you will use in Ghana would not work in Singapore, for an example. Working in North America is very different, with a very assertive culture. And in Southeast Asia, it's very hierarchical. So adaptive leadership is critical and required in navigating global roles and working in different regions. But it is a fantastic experience to be privileged to be able to work in these regions and building my skills and understanding people at a different level. I think I have been privileged to be able to do that, to be able to work across different regions all across the world. My microphone keeps going off. I don't know why. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
we can hear
good.
you. Yes. A friend asked me this morning that what is ESG? What is ESG and how different is it from, say, sustainability or corporate social responsibility?
Yeah, I think ESG fundamentally helps the company create value and also mitigate risk. So if you look at the key pillars of ESG, the E's for environment, which you're looking at biodiversity, climate resilience, resource efficiency. Then you look at the social, which is you're looking at human rights, you're looking at community impact, diversity and inclusion, that's where it comes in. And then you look at governance. So you're looking at transparency, board accountability, ethics within business. Integrating all of this within your business as part of your business strategy, like I shared before, will help you mitigate risks. And the differentiation here is ESG is not just like the traditional CSR that we've been doing for such a long time, where it's more philanthropy based. So we find that there's a need in the community. You go and donate, and then you just measure, okay, I've solved the problem. But it's not really integrated in the business. It's very siloed. When you look at CSR, it's probably done by the communications team or a specific department, but you don't have a chance to integrate ESG into your business when it doesn't come from the executive level and integrate into the supply chain, integrate into your marketing campaigns, and throughout the whole business. That's when you reap the reports. That's when you reap the rewards of ESG integrating it into your business.
Viewers, if you are finding the discussion very interesting, I urge you to subscribe to the channel and share with your friends and colleagues around the world to do same. So my next question is, I want to find out from you, why has ESG become so a powerful driver in global finance and investment decisions?
I think anything gains traction if it's delivering results, right? And some recent studies have suggested that ESG sustainable funds will return a median of around 12.5% versus traditional funds if you're looking at H1 2025, right? So it clearly tells you the business case for ESG. We're in a climate volatile world now. I think it's hard for people to even track when is it going to rain in Ghana, when is it going to rain in the US. For example, there was no snow in Denver, which should be seeing snow during Christmas, but there was no snow. So it's important that you embed ESG as a risk mitigation measure in your business. It's going to help you mitigate all of these climate issues. Also going to help you unlock capital. As you speak now, ESG assets is in trillions. As of 2025, we are looking at something around 3.9 trillion US dollars. And this is huge. So it's not just doing it and you be siloed and you're in your corner, but investors are now prioritizing ESG as the way to invest. So you need to ensure that you have embedded ESG in your business for you to be able to access these funds, right? And EU, I'm sure you know about the EU CBMA standard, which is really strict on ESG as an essential part of the product that you produce. And the risks of not having ESG embedded is really going to affect a lot of, especially in Africa, a lot of these, I'll say, non-traditional exports that can be exported. There are crazy markets outside of Africa that are ready to buy from Africa, but we have a lot of these organizations in Africa who are ready to export who do not understand these standards, and that's part of the work that we want to do in Ghana to help people and help organizations ensure that their products are eco-certified and they can actually export them. So ESG is a competitive advantage for any business in 2026. It is not a nice to have, it's something that you must do to grow the value of your business and also create access for your products as well.
And so do you think companies are genuinely integrating the principles of ESG in their operations, or they are just doing it as a way of, greenwashing?
So it's a very delicate subject. I'm sure you've heard things like Dieselgate. I don't want to mention the company's name. A lot of companies, especially in the EU space, because this ESG, the EU places a lot of emphasis on ESG and does regular audits to ensure that companies are actually delivering the goals of ESG according to the standards that the EU has created. Greenwashing remains a huge concern, right? There's a lot of companies that are doing greenwashing. They're actually not doing the work. It's more around the PR that you're doing. And I saw a lot of that through my work all across the world. That even when you form a coalition, for example, a company just wants to join the coalition so that it's seen as I'm actually doing something in this coalition. But when it comes to putting funds towards, say, a regenerative agriculture project, and every company is supposed to put out, say, $250,000, you find X or Y company, you can't find them for the next few months because they just want to look good as being part of the coalition that is working on ESG. So the greenwashing exists, but I think a lot of companies are also working hard. In my previous companies that I worked in Diageo, they are really working hard across some of the ESG pillars. So a lot of companies are doing what they're supposed to do. Others are greenwashing, but I think what will bridge the gap is regulations and enforcement of these regulations. That's why you have companies in Europe making sure that they are imbibing ESG compliance and everything that they are doing. So regulatory enforcement is a huge part to ensure that companies do comply and reduces the scale of the greenwashing.
And what, in your view, do you think we can do to improve ESG strategies, ESG frameworks, in order to improve accountability in businesses?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think businesses will move when there is regulation. When they see the risks of regulation, businesses will ensure that they have to abide by the regulations because they don't want to they don't want to lose out in terms of fines and risks in regulatory exposure. So I think regulation is important. We need to ensure that, especially in emerging markets where we have all the regulations, but we are not enforcing these regulations, we ensure that these regulations are being enforced. I think leadership is important here, right? ESG strategies should be one of the top 3 things for every CEO because of the value it can create for you. So when you have when the CEO cascades work with the ESG core team to cascade the ESG strategy through the business, there's less resistance in the business. And then you find other functions also trying to understand and embed ESG as part of the way they work. I've been in companies where it came from the top, the leadership of ESG came from the top, and you saw that all other functions were finding smarter ways to embed ESG as part of their work as well.
Yeah, and for a businessman or a businesswoman listening to you, what do you think are some of the challenges confronting the implementation of ESG principles?
Yes, I think, for example, if you're a businessman in Ghana or any part of Africa, right, CFTA, standardized policies are there. There are frameworks that you can build your knowledge on or seek some capacity building for you to access markets through the AFCFTA framework as well. If you want to go to the European markets, you need to understand what are the CBMA framework and what does it mean for your company and the products you want to export. So there's a huge opportunity out there in markets, but then if you do not abide by the ESG principles for your business, you might grow in your home country, but you going global is going to be limited due to the ESG frameworks that a lot of countries and continents are putting in place for goods that are coming into that region. So the business case for ESG is really important now. It is not a nice to have like the traditional CSR stuff where you're going to donate something, you just send somebody in comms. But here is going to drive and you're going to see returns on your investments if you're investing in ESG across your business.
Yeah. Can you give us a practical example of how you implemented an ESG strategy in one of the companies that you work for, so that people will have a sense of, what we are discussing, so that it's not just about theoretical discussion, but, practical, issues.
Yeah, 100%. I think I can use the Africa Plastic Recycling Alliance as an example. When we decided as the Diageo to look at what is our carbon footprint externally, Diageo decided to really understand that. So we had a clear view of, okay, now here's the risks of our carbon footprints, right? What do we do about it? That is the E in the ESG environmentally. How do we mitigate that? Based on that, we looked at what are the coalitions externally that we can join, because we cannot eradicate the plastic problem all across Africa. So we had to go out there and work with other organizations to be able to form a recycling alliance. If you look at the social part, even when we are forming the alliance, we set out clear goals around inclusivity in the coalition that we are building, in the projects that we're going to invest in. So all the partners that came on board to establish a recycling, I'll say, facility, or we're looking at investment to establish a recycling facility, we always made sure that inclusivity was one of the key metrics for these organizations as well. So bringing women into the value chain, driving diversity as well. And then we also had ensuring that we do have a clear audit procedure so that everything we are collecting and the data we are collecting is verifiable, to ensure that the credibility of the association or the credibility of the project is maintained. I think what drove one of the key outcomes of that is it opened the door for multinationals into the room for conversations on policy. So then you realize that in each market, all across Africa, I was in South Africa to speak on ESG regulations for plastics. But if you had not done that work, it would not have given us the opportunity to be able to have that conversation with governments, because then government will build some credibility through that project as well. And that has helped encourage investment into the plastic recycling space across Africa. So we've seen investment coming up in East Africa, West Africa, and that never existed without us taking action as a clear business strategy, and we're going ahead of that and working with our partners.
In the context of global green transition, how do you see the future of ESG?
I think the future of ESG can be in many folds. So if you ask me, I think first is integration, right? There has to be harmonized standards all across. There's ESG standards in Europe. There are frameworks in Africa. There are frameworks in North America. Europe seems to be the most advanced one. So having a harmonized ESG, I'll say framework all across is going to help, so that it's easy to build capacity in one region and it's global, right? So that is number one. Number two is transparency, and how are we going to how are we going to get to the transparency space? The future is technology, and we need to embed things like AI, blockchain, to ensure that transactions and I'll say projects are transparent, that we can do some real-time auditing. In the future as well, it has to be inclusive. All projects that we run has to have an inclusive element in it. It has to be, I would say, it has to be resilient as well. Looking at the EU Green Deal, which is supposed to scale finance. Africa has around 3 trillion ESG transition needs in Africa as well. And how do we drive and how do we work on that? So all of that is absolutely critical for the future of ESG as well. So in a nutshell, I would say first, you have to look at harmonization. You have to look at technology. You have to ensure that it's inclusive, and also you have to ensure that it's resilient as well. That's kind of how the future looks like.
Any final reflections for policymakers, businesses, or young professionals who are entering the field of ESG?
I think for policymakers, I've spoken a bit about that as well. For policymakers, it has to do with ensure that your ESG framework that you're putting together is going to incentivize the practice of ESG by companies, right? If you look at a Singapore model where they put in an ESG framework that has attracted huge foreign direct investment, something around $20 billion. So there has to be incentives when you build ESG frameworks and policy in your market. If you look at businesses, you have to embed ESG. I just spoke about all the benefits you get by embedding ESG. There's a lot of access to finance, green finance assets that you can go after if you're embedding ESG. It helps you mitigate risks in your supply chain as well. If you embed ESG there. Diversity, we all know the importance of diversity for your organization. It's going to improve performance because you have divergent thoughts in the boardroom or within your teams as well. For young professionals, what I would say is that I think you need to build your knowledge in ESG. You need to take that course, focus on emerging markets where ESG can leapfrog development in these emerging markets as well. And I think for young professionals as well, you need to know that ESG is not just a trend that is going to fade away. It has a clear business value, and it's the blueprint for the future as well.
Yeah. And finally, is there a global framework of ESG, or everyone or every business is doing what they believe to be ESG or they know to be ESG?
I think a lot of business looked at the SBTI framework as the way in which they want to embed ESG within their businesses. There are quite a number of frameworks that people can look at, but I think we always have to ensure that we are aligning with the green transition ambition by 2050, so that we can get to the carbon neutral space in your market or in the market that your business is in. You have to look at your own government goals as well, and how can you align to that as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Gabi, thanks so much for your time. We are very grateful for your insights. I believe all of us on the show have gained new insights into how ESG is implemented and how we need to equip our skills, those of us interested in developing a career in ESG, how we can equip our skills in the field of ESG to help businesses grow. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate this opportunity. Thanks everyone for making the time to join us as well. Thank you.